Most intelligence failures are commonly explained as the result of insufficient information. That explanation sounds reasonable, but it distracts from the real issue. Some CIA failures originate from careful, comprehensive analysis, not because the analysis was wrong, but because it could not be translated into a single, actionable directive. The CIA does not fail because it lacks information. It fails because it cannot act when too many plausible directions remain under consideration. The 16-point compass rose at the center of the CIA seal is not a symbol of strength. It is a symbol of uncertainty, deliberately preserved as an institutional principle. From the Bay of Pigs in 1961 to the debates surrounding Iraq, the CIA is often portrayed as an agency that got it wrong or misjudged the situation. But the more important question is not whether the CIA had enough information. The real question is this: how does an intelligence system designed to keep multiple possibilities alive operate when it is placed under pressure to select a single course of action? To answer that question, we do not need to begin with a specific operation. We need to begin with how the CIA defines the role of analysis within its structure of power. At the center of the CIA seal is a 16-point compass rose. This is not a decorative element. It is a condensed model of how the intelligence system organizes uncertainty. In intelligence doctrine, a direction is not merely geographic. It represents a collection source, a perspective, and an interpretive framework. Information may come from human sources, humint, from signals, sigint, from imagery, imint, from open sources, osint, and from other specialized data streams. The 16-point compass rose does not suggest that the world has 16 answers. It suggests that multiple explanations can be reasonable at the same time. The critical detail lies at the center of the compass rose. All directions converge toward a single point, but that point is only where assessments are synthesized, not where decisions are made. According to the doctrine of Sherman Kent, the intellectual foundation of American intelligence analysis, intelligence is not knowledge. Intelligence is the organization and interpretation of knowledge. Intelligence analysis does not exist to make decisions. It exists to clearly describe the structure of uncertainty that decision-makers must confront. At this point, an important visual detail emerges. The eagle, the symbol of power and action, sits above the compass rose. Visually, the eagle is higher. Institutionally, action always lies outside the domain of analysis. This reflects a tension that has never been fully resolved. Intelligence is not permitted to issue orders, yet power that ignores intelligence becomes blind. Viewed this way, the CIA seal is not a declaration of authority. It is an acknowledgement that analysis and action operate according to different logics, and that conflict between them is unavoidable. The problem begins when analysis is no longer allowed to fully describe uncertainty and is instead forced to narrow itself to support a course of action that is already expected. If the 16-point compass rose represents the ideal, the Bay of Pigs in 1961 shows what happens when that ideal is compressed. The CIA believed that Cuban exile forces would land successfully, Castro's military would hesitate or fracture, and the population would rise up. These assumptions did not emerge from nothing. They were built on precedents such as Guatemala in 1954, on reports of dissatisfaction within the Cuban armed forces,
and on assessments that Castro's regime was still immature. The problem was not the absence of dissenting analysis. The CIA Inspector General's report after the failure identified a critical detail. As planning progressed, the role of analysis was reversed. As planning progressed, estimates were increasingly framed to support the operation rather than to challenge its premises. CIA Inspector General's survey of the Cuban operation, 1961. This is the decisive moment, not when the CIA lacked information, but when analysis was no longer permitted to challenge the decision as it was taking shape. During the preparation of the operation, CIA analysts expressed doubts about the likelihood of a spontaneous popular uprising and about the willingness of Castro's military to collapse. Those doubts were not rejected because they were wrong. They gradually became unhelpful to the action being prepared. From that point on, analysis no longer served to expose risk. It became a tool to make an already anticipated action appear feasible. The compass rose still had 16 directions, but not all directions were allowed to exist equally on the analytic table. Only those directions that could be translated into an operational plan were allowed to persist. Under political pressure, time constraints, and expectations of action, analysis was pulled away from its role of mapping the full structure of risk and redirected to support a trajectory that had largely been decided in advance. Here, intelligence did not fail because it was wrong, but because it was no longer permitted to be correct in the full analytic sense. Today, modern analytic systems, including artificial intelligence, process data faster, compare scenarios more efficiently, and even recommend courses of action. The question is no longer, what do we know? It is, who or which mechanism decides what is reasonable enough to be converted into action. The greatest risk is not machines replacing humans, but judgment gradually being transferred from people to process. When judgment is delegated, responsibility does not disappear. It simply becomes harder to trace. The 16-point compass rose in the CIA SEAL is not a promise of success. It is a reminder that major failures rarely originate from a lack of information, but from the absence of institutional space to confront the uncertainty that analysis produces. In an era dominated by speed and pressure to act, the remaining question is this: is analysis guiding decisions, or is it only being summoned at the end to legitimize a decision that has already been made? That question does not belong only to the CIA during the Cold War. It is a recurring problem in how states act under conditions of uncertainty, and it remains fully relevant in contemporary decision-making.